everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net and scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me.
From the City of Angels off the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Noory, and welcome to Coast AM.
The iconic greeting that heralds our journey into the worlds of the strange and unusual. George Noory has guided us deep into the realms of the impossible since 1996 on his program called Nighthawk on KTRS in St. Louis.
Did you know that?
His journey expanded in April of 2001 when he began to guest host on Coast to Coast AM.
Kind of exciting, isn't it?
He would take over the weeknight hosting position in January of 2003 from the retiring founder and host, Art Bell. George would continue to champion the airwaves and expanded his media presence to become a regular contributor on History Channel's Ancient Aliens. In December of 2012, George would launch his own television show called Beyond Belief with George Noory on the Gaia TV network. Throughout his career, George has given a voice to thousands of people who have experienced the unexplained. He's provided a compassionate ear and understanding to those left isolated after their horrifying encounters with circumstances that defy explanation.
And it was a strange situation.
Even though George Noory has become a household name, who is the man behind the fame? On this episode of the Paranormal Portal, I had the incredible opportunity to talk with George about his amazing journey, get his thoughts on several aspects of the realm of the unknown, and learn about the amazing man behind the microphone.
You know, you bring up a good point.
Prepare to enter the Paranormal Portal. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. Hope you guys are doing wonderful out there, and thank you so much for all your love and support. We have an amazingly special guest. This is really one of those interviews that's kind of always been on my bucket list, and in a manner of speaking, it's a dream come true to have this opportunity. And we're bringing on Mr. George Noory, who is everybody knows he's the host of Coast to Coast AM. He is a regular contributor on History Channel's Ancient Aliens, and he is the host of Beyond Belief on Gaia Network. So I am just absolutely thrilled to have this opportunity to talk to him. So let's get right at it. George, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is an absolute honor.
Brent, it's my pleasure. This is exciting for me. I don't get an opportunity to do this all the time on the other side of the microphone, so I'm going to have some fun.
That was it for me, too. I was like, I would like to have the opportunity to talk to you because, as I mentioned before, you've done thousands of interviews, but it's kind of neat to have the opportunity to put you on the other side of the mic. So this is really exciting. I guess kind of the big canned question that I do start most interviews with, because I'm always interested in people's journeys. It's like, how did you get here? I mean, was there some events or anything in your history that kind of brought you into this weird and wonderful world of the unknown, or how did this happen?
Do you want the broadcast story or the beginning of everything?
Whatever.
There's two different stories.
Okay. I guess, as much as you're willing to share, I'd love to hear it.
11 years old, wake up one night, and I'm bouncing in bed on the ceiling.
Oh, my God.
Looking down at my body, asleep.
Okay. Wow.
And I'm going, is this a dream? What is this? I had astral projected, left my body. I'm bouncing along the ceiling, looking down at my little 11-year-old body. And at that point, it rammed me back down into my body. When you become aware of astral projection, something happens and you just get out of the mode.
Wow.
So I'm back in my body and I'm awake now going, wow, what a dream. What was that? And then I went to the library, coincidentally, and I stumbled into the occult section and I found a book by Hayward Muldoon and Sylvan Muldoon and Hayward Carrington called Projections of the Astral Body. And there was a picture of a person in bed with an astral body floating above them.
Oh, wow.
And I went, that's what happened to me.
Right.
So I got the book and I read it and I was obsessed with that. And then things progressed as the years went by. When I was about 13 or 14, my mother brought me home a book called We Are Not Alone by Walter Sullivan, who at the time was a New York Times science writer. And that was about the fact that we're not alone in the universe. And I loved that. Wow. Then Look magazine came out with the story of Barney and Betty Hill, the abduction case out of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with that. And so I decided, Brent, at that age, 11 to 14, I'm going to go into broadcasting and interview these kinds of people.
Oh, cool.
Because people will talk to a broadcaster. They're not going to just talk to George Noory, the kid. But if you're a broadcaster on radio or television, they're more apt to talk to you. So that was my decision, and I never, ever stopped.
That is fantastic, because I guess that was, first of all, it's really neat that your parents seem to, be supportive of this. Because a lot of parents are like, oh, that stuff's a bunch of nonsense. Put that away. Focus on your homework or whatever. But it's neat that they were accommodating to your interests. That's really cool.
Well, they sure were. My mother, God love her, is still 95 years old.
Oh, neat.
Listens to my show regularly out of Detroit.
Oh.
And she calls me up every once in a while. Why'd you interview that person that way? You should have asked them this question and this one. I'm going, Mom, come on, stop it. But as I got into my broadcast career, Brent, one of my first interviews was with Stanton Friedman, the late ufologist. And I'll tell you an interesting story about that, how synchronicity works.
Okay.
So he's my first radio interview. I'm 21 years old, working at WCAR AM at the time in Detroit, a huge 50,000 watt station. And he's my first interview. He had come to Detroit to speak before a bunch of university people about UFOs.
Okay.
And I saw it in the Detroit News, a little clipping that said Stanton Friedman is coming to town to talk about this and that. And I went up to my news director and said, I want to cover this story. And he said, it's UFOs. That's nonsense. If you want to do it on your own time, because it was after hours.
Sure.
So on my own time, I went to that university, Oakland University, where he was speaking, recorded him, interviewed him, came back, cut it up on tape, played it on the air. The news director loved it. And I said, see, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh.
Then my next interview was with Dr. Benjamin Simon, who happened to be the psychiatrist to Barney and Betty Hill.
Oh, wow.
And I had him on tape. I still wish I kept that tape. Yeah. But I remember specifically asking him if they were telling him the truth about their abduction case.
Sure.
And he said, they're not lying. I don't know what happened to them, but under hypnosis, they told me these two incredible stories that matched separately. They're not lying. Whatever happened to them, they believe it. I don't know what happened to them.
Sure.
But they believe that's what happened to them. And I said, wow, that's amazing. So I aired that. And I just kept getting into it more and more. I went into traditional television a little bit later on in my career. But I always had that eye toward the unusual, the paranormal, the ghosts. And when I had my opportunity to do Coast to Coast, then we can get into how that happened.
Sure.
I just took it and ran with it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really neat to me that this was a vision that started as a young child, and yet through your perseverance, through your, belief in that and your desire, you were able to manifest it. That's so powerful,
I never gave it up. And then, so after I left television, I owned a racehorse farm. I owned a television production company. And I did that for a couple of years. I sold a production company and I had nothing to do. And at that, I was 38 years old at the time. And I'm saying, what am I going to do with my, I made a little money, not a lot.
Sure.
Enough to last me 3 or 4 years.
Uh-huh.
And I said, what am I going to do for a living? So I decided I'm going to just sit down and watch a movie. Then I watched Talk Radio with Eric Bogosian.
Oh.
Great movie about a case out of Denver. The talk show host was Alan Berg, who was shot by neo-Nazis.
Oh, God.
I said, wow, I want to be a talk show host. I don't want to end up like that, but that's what I want to do.
Sure.
And so I found a job in St. Louis filling in part-time doing talk radio and newscasts and stuff like that, resurrecting my broadcast career. And a guy at a station had just bought a station in St. Louis, was trying to raid other stations with talent. And he heard me one night and he said, I want you to do a night show for me. I'm replacing a program called Coast to Coast. I want you to be the local host for me in that time period.
Oh, wow.
I said, well, what's Coast to Coast? And he said, oh, it's some wacko, strange show. So I went aboard and I called myself the Nighthawk.
Oh, neat.
And I did that from 9 to midnight, Monday through Friday in St. Louis. And I displaced Coast to Coast. Now I'm getting calls from Coast to Coast fans saying, what are you doing on the air? You bumped Art Bell off the air. How could you do that?
Uh-huh.
And so one day the station came back to me and said, we're going to pick up Coast to Coast. We're going to put it back to where it was. We've got too many complaints, but we're moving you up a couple hours.
Oh, wow.
Is that okay? And I said, of course it's okay. So I was the lead-in to the National Coast to Coast show in St. Louis. Then one day, a friend of mine by the name of Mike Siegel replaced Art Bell, who had retired. Art retired many times.
Sure.
So Mike is now the full-time host of Coast to Coast. And so I called him up one day and said, Mike, can I fill in for you whenever you're not here? He said, I'll give your tape to our executive, Alan Corbett. Alan heard it, called me up and said, we like what you're doing. You're interviewing the same people we do, except on a local basis. Yes, you can fill in for Mike whenever he's gone. Mm-hmm. So what I would do, Brent, is I would do my local show. Coast to Coast ran at midnight in St. Louis. I would do my local show from 9 p.m. to midnight Central Time. Alan Corbett would call me an hour before Coast started and said, Mike Siegel's not going on tonight. Can you fill in? I said, who's the guest? He says, well, I'll email it. Email was just starting then.
Oh, okay.
He said, I'll email you the information. So during commercial breaks, I'm studying the guest, getting ready to do Coast to Coast. So I get off the air at midnight, local time, run down the hallway to another studio that my engineer had hooked up with the Coast Network. And I'm doing the show. Now, 2 months later, Art decides he's coming back. They dump Mike Siegel.
Oh,
they got rid of him.
Okay.
They called me up and said, we don't want what we did to Mike to reflect on you. We made a change. Art has come back. We still want you as his backup guy.
Oh, wow.
So I said, okay, fine. So I would get calls while I'm on the air in St. Louis doing my local show, Brent, from Alan Corbett or a producer. And they would say, we think Art's going to miss the show tonight. I said, I'm in a commercial break doing my local show. And I said, what do you mean you think he's not going to be on tonight? They said, we don't know. So this is what we need you to do. Prepare for the show. We'll pay you for it. I said, no. I only want to get paid if I do it. Well, okay, but we'll take care of things. But we want you to go in the studio. When you hear the opening theme and you don't hear Art's voice, you go. You're on the air. I said, you got to be kidding me. And they said, no, if you don't hear his voice, that means he's not there. You go.
Wow.
So I'm filling in for him one night, and the theme song's on, bump, 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 bump. And I'm listening, and the producer's talking in my ear going, go, you're on, go. There's no Art. So I said, well, good evening. Did my thing. That happened so often. And then Art decided to quit again full time.
Wow.
They turned to me, and now I've been doing it 22 years. Here we are.
Isn't that
But
something?
what a story, isn't it?
That's amazing. It's kind of neat to see the behind the scenes through your story because, for the listeners, it just sounds like, well, this is really well done. And God, they must, it's well planned and everything. But to hear that, sometimes you're just right by the seat of your pants into the chair, that's.
Oh, it's incredible. I think fate took over.
Sure.
And put me in the chair that I'm in now. And I'm having a heck of a time doing it.
And you're incredibly, incredibly powerful voice in these phenomena, and you and Art, I think we're incredibly instrumental in bringing all this weirdness and bizarreness into our consciousness in a lot of ways. I mean, of course, there was always been yarns and legends and stories, but to have that collaborative effort of bringing all these people into one platform, or several platforms, and giving them a national voice, international voice, I think has done so much to move the needle forward. So it's an incredible accomplishment,
It's truly a remarkable program. 640 markets. We podcast now. We're on YouTube, Coast to Coast AM official. If you're on YouTube, we're all over the place, and it's just growing and growing and growing. But I got to tell you, back in April 13th, 2018, we got word that Art Bell had died. I'm on the air, and I don't believe it. And I knew in my news background, you don't go with a story of somebody dying unless you have corroborated it and had several sources tell you this person has died. Yeah. You just don't go with it unless you know for sure. And I'm going, we got to call George Knapp because this is in Las Vegas, in that area. Maybe he can check it out for us. And he got back to us and said, yeah, the sheriff confirmed he's dead. He died. Then we went with the story on the air that night. And that was one of the toughest shows I ever had to do. I mean, it was just heartbreaking.
Had you and Art become friends and close? Or?
We were never friends, Brent.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Sure.
Art wanted to come back again after I had been doing it for a couple of years, and the network said, no, we have somebody now who's solid, and we're not making a change.
Sure.
We'll hire you for weekends, which he agreed to do for a little bit. But there was that little tension there.
Sure.
Not from me to him as much as him to me.
Right.
So I just backed off.
Yeah, that's a tough position to be in. But yeah, I mean, you've done an exceptional job carrying the torch and continuing to promote that. I'm kind of curious about your take on this. Now, you're incredibly involved, I guess is the best way to put it, in the UFO community, and I'm kind of curious about your take on some of this strangeness because there's so much. I don't know. Sometimes UFOs interactions or experiences of witnesses almost seems like it's more not physical than physical, and yet there is a very physical aspect to it. So I'm kind of spiderwebbing off, but I'm just dying to know what your thoughts are on this phenomena. Is it possible to understand what is actually going on here, or do you have any ideas in all of these years pursuing the truths of the UFO phenomena? What do you think is going on?
Well, I pursued this all my career, and
Right.
I'm convinced we have been visited since the beginning of time. We may have been created by the extraterrestrials. There's a God,
Sure.
but the ETs may have helped create us, and it's been happening for a long time. And what's really happening news-wise right now across the country is Harvard University, by the way, just came out with a report that they believe that there could be extraterrestrials living within planet Earth, either underground or living among us or something. And that's becoming more and more prevalent. Pilots are seeing things. It's been going on for a long time. The fact that the government still hasn't come out and disclosed exactly what's going on is still a little baffling to me.
Right.
But we're getting there. We're taking baby steps. And I think the public is aware. You know, the Brookings Institute did many years ago a study that basically said people can't handle the truth, using that line from A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson.
Sure.
But we can handle the truth. Yes. People are ready. And I think if we polled people today and said, is there extraterrestrial life out there in the universe? A huge majority would say absolutely. Right. And they wouldn't panic about it.
Right.
They wouldn't run around going, oh, my God, they're here. They're going to eat us. They're going to take us away.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, you know, I gotta agree wholeheartedly with what you said, because I think when the Pentagon tapes and files were kind of leaked, the Tic Tac craft and all those reports from the Navy, it didn't have nearly the impact that I thought it would, being such a revolutionary disclosure that these pilots, these professionally trained pilots and observers who are used to recognizing everything in the sky, were confronted by these craft that were doing things they couldn't even get their heads around. And the video came out, and yet it was just another day for the most of us. So I wonder, though, George, do you think at this point official disclosure is even necessary?
Yeah, I still think it's necessary.
Okay.
I think we need an official word from the government of what's going on, why it's been going on, and more importantly, why did they hold it back from us for all these years? I know Paul Hynek, who is the son of the late Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who had up Project Blue Book. Mm-hmm. And Hynek, you know, was a skeptic in the beginning. He came to Michigan during a UFO flap when I was in my teens and called it swamp gas. Now, he may have been forced to say that, but that's what he said. Yeah. But there was a case that changed his mind. And after he left Project Blue Book, he became an investigator into UFOs and a staunch believer. But there was a case of Lonnie Zamora, a police officer in Socorro, New Mexico, who was coming down the highway, and he saw what he thought was a flipped over white car on the side of the freeway with two people running around. As he got close to this object, he realized it was a UFO that had landed, and the two people scurrying around were ETs. He became a believer.
Sure.
It was that case that convinced J. Allen Hynek to start believing in this too, because he said the cop's not lying. He witnessed something unusual, and the thing took off with the two occupants aboard. He saw something real.
Yeah.
Now, in the beginning, I thought maybe that's a lunar landing test site. And what they saw was the lunar module come down and the two astronauts. But no, it was the real deal.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty powerful stuff. I gotta wonder, with the cases like that, and certainly with the Betty and Barney Hill, there is now. In that case, was there any physical evidence that was able to be tested and such? I'm not.
No, they took off.
Okay.
It was just his word against nobody's.
Okay.
And you had to believe him or not, and most people believe him.
Right, but there does seem like with Betty and Barney Hill, for instance, that case, there was tangible evidence in the form of Betty's dress, and certainly I think didn't their car have some marks on it as well?
Yeah, but at that time, Brent, they didn't have the sophistication of testing that we have today.
Sure.
Boy, if it had happened now with the evidence and the investigative techniques, we could have really done a lot of things. But again, I go back to the psychiatrist, Benjamin Simon, who said, I don't know what happened to them, but whatever they think happened to them, they believe it. They're not lying.
Right.
So what do you say?
Sure. Yeah, that's fantastic. And do you know if any effort has been made, because Betty's dress still exists, right? And there's still some of that residue on there. Has that any other attempts been made to further research what the hell that stuff is?
I'm not aware of that. I don't even know who would own that right now.
Okay.
Or whether her family has it or it's in the hands of some government agency or what. But we do have the technological ability to test this stuff.
Right. Yeah. And the answers that
we should.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be great too. But I'm optimistic that maybe that disclosure will come at some time. I got to tell you though, I was really blown away that somebody from Harvard put their name on this new idea. I just covered it on my live stream just on Wednesday night. And it was like, wow, this is pretty credible. You know, with the guy from Harvard and the individual from the Montana University coming together and basically voicing this hypothesis. I was like, wow, it does seem like we're moving towards that disclosure though, right? Do you think this is all a calculated measure to finally reaching a disclosure picture or no?
It's not planned. It's just happening.
Okay.
It's just happening. And I too, when I went with the story, was very curious why they went public. But, you know, the late John Mack was from Harvard University and he studied alien abductions and he went public with that.
Oh, okay. I guess I wasn't familiar with that.
Got killed when he stepped off a curb in London and he got hit by a car.
Oh.
But they're there. Professionals are coming forward. My granddaughter wants to be a professional pilot. She's 22 years old and she's halfway there.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, Kaya, if you're ever up in the skies and you see something unusual, you tell Papa what's going on. She said, I will.
Uh-huh. No, I think that's phenomenal. In fact, there was just a sighting around, wasn't it around Iceland, where two independent pilots, or around the UK or Iceland, where two independent pilots saw some craft, and they both were talking back and forth about, yeah, we saw that too. And apparently, I don't know if it showed up on radar and stuff, but do you think this stuff is happening more, George, or do you think it's just that it's more normal to talk about it than ever before? Do you think there's more frequency of events or just more people that are willing to say, hey, this is what I saw?
Actually think, Brent, we had more sightings in the beginning years ago.
Okay.
Social networking now has helped and things like that for immediate instant. But, I mean, in the old days, we used to have reports of landing pods and burned out areas and things like that. We don't get that anymore.
Yeah, that's
at
true.
all.
That is true. Huh. But a lot of people are looking up now.
Absolutely. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut who's passed on, was a friend of mine. Oh. And he told me directly, he said, George, I've never seen anything, but I'm told by people in government, we are being visited. And he believed it to the day he died. Sure. And I believe him.
Yeah, I do too. I have witnessed a craft personally, and it was an incredible sighting. And it, I was always a believer in the phenomena, but it's just when I saw it, it was just this groundbreaking moment of like, okay, well now I know what people mean between believing and knowing, and yeah, I have no doubt that they're here. I don't know what they want or what they're doing. I've certainly heard several of the hypotheses. It's like, are they just kind of, are we like a prison planet, so to speak, or is this we're like the local petting zoo where they just kind of, the family gets together in their saucer and comes and looks at the safari park here, or what's going on? It's mind numbing, but it's definitely moving forward, I would say.
It's an incredible planet. It's teeming with all kinds of life. I mean, all you got to do is go outside on a nice day and look at the insects, the birds, the dogs, the cats. It's everywhere. There's all kinds of life. This is an unusual, gifted planet for whatever reason. And I think they're curious how did this planet get to be so unusual? They've got everything here. We on our planet may have just this, and this, but look at this planet Earth. They've got everything. And I think they're very curious about that.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that maybe the atmospheres or the the temperate conditions there are just one or the other, like like a Tatooine from Star Wars or a Hoth. I got these Star Wars references. Sorry, I'm fully geeking out here, George. But
Chewbacca was a Bigfoot.
Yeah. Apparently George Lucas says that wasn't his inspiration, but it's like, God, how could that not be?
He looks just like one.
I know.
As a matter of fact, that little creature on your monitor in the back looks like a Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah. Back here it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a 3D print one of my listeners sent me. That was really cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm really encouraged by it. I do think it's interesting, at least in governmental circles, that there does seem to be factions within the in government and military and intelligence communities, because we've gotten this incredible information that apparently was leaked from, the Navy. However, the other branches seem to say, oh, nothing to see here, move along. Whereas, the Navy seems pretty, at least coming of the opinion that, yeah, there's something very real going on here and we don't know what it is. So what do you think about that? Do you think that there's divisions in interests?
I spent 9 years in the Navy. They're doing this because of me, Brent.
Clearly. Absolutely.
Clearly. They said, we got to do this for our Navy buddy, George.
Well, God bless you.
But there are some factions within the government that are still closed-mouthed and very tight-lipped about this. And there are others that are just saying, we can't keep not telling the public what's going on. It's just too unusual. David Grush was one of those.
Okay. Yeah. What is your take on David Grush? Because I've heard, I liked his testimony. I thought it was absolutely compelling. But then of course, inevitably come the detractors trying to discredit and and put him into our disbelief category. But then I don't know. What he's saying to me seems plausible. What is your take on that?
He had nothing to gain. He had everything to lose. The guy came out and told the truth the way he sees it. Mm-hmm. And I think he's a hero for that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think what he did was incredibly brave. Do you think it was potentially a calculated move by the intelligence community, or was he actually acting independently on his own?
I think he was independent on his own. They probably figured, we can't stop this guy. We can't do anything to him. So we'll just let him do his thing and let the public decide whether he's real or not.
Okay. So moving into another UFO category, what about a guy like Bob Lazar? What's your take on Bob?
Yeah, I was just with George Knapp a week and a half ago.
Okay.
And he was the one who broke the Bob Lazar story. Mm-hmm. And he believes Lazar. He thinks he's the real deal. And I said, George, you sure? He said, yeah, I really do. So I will base this on George Knapp, mm-hmm. who's got more experience than any of us put together when it comes to UFOs.
Sure.
He believes Bob Lazar told the truth and witnessed some incredible things at Area 51.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I find his story and the things that he's testified to, at least orally to people that like George, to be absolutely fascinating. And it does actually, Bob Lazar's story to me really lends a lot of credence to the Roswell story. Then, it's like, if this is true, then this is probably true too, because they kind of seem to go hand in hand in a way with the recovered craft and the alien bodies and stuff like that. Would you agree?
Yeah, Roswell happened in 1947.
Right.
And the atomic bombs that we dropped were in 1945. Mm. It seems like they came here after the fact to do that.
Right. So do you think it's potentially possible that when these detonations maybe sent a beacon into the cosmos, like, hey, these guys are up to something. We better go check it out.
Well, they were aware of us since the get-go, because they've
Sure.
been coming to us since the beginning of time. But I think it really raised a red flag throughout the universe that these folks are in a new club, and we need to watch them and see what they're doing.
Right. And it is more than interesting, the fact that military installations and even civilian installations that are nuclear powered or deal with nuclear energy seem to be absolute UFO magnets, right?
And there's no question about it. And it's a magnificent universe, and it's not Matrix, it's not digital, it's the real deal.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who think this is just created. It's a fiction of our imagination. Well, I'm in no rush to see what it is on the other side, but I'm telling you, it's all the real deal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it's absolutely fascinating. All of this stuff is. I've got to ask you because this is a great opportunity to get your take on this. But I often ponder this, and I've actually heard some theories about this, but I'm curious if you have any. The thing that really kind of cooks my bacon, George, is that these are potentially races that are maybe thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or however more advanced than us. And yet, these super advanced craft and stuff, but yet they somehow manage to drive into the ground or crash and stuff. And it's like, wow, are we ever going to outgrow these collisions? What do you think is going on with these UFOs just crashing? Do you think it's, well, I guess I'll just leave it open rather than try to quantify that for you.
That's always baffled me too. It's that question I've asked 1,000 people,
Right.
1,000 times. If they have the technology to get there and get here, how in the world do they end up crashing right at the end? Nobody's got the answer to that.
Right.
Nobody knows.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting theory that a gentleman shared with me, and I thought this was fascinating. And he thought that potentially their navigational arrays or whatever they use might be tied to the some form of geomagnetic. I don't know.
Well, something's happening, Brent.
Right.
Something is causing them technologically to malfunction.
Right.
When they're here in our atmosphere.
Yeah.
When they're out there in space, they seem to be fine. I think most of them are in a mothership anyway.
Oh, right.
But when they finally come down to planet Earth, something interferes with something.
Yeah.
And they end up coming down.
Well, what this person postulated is that perhaps it's from nuclear testing, that somehow that disrupts the energy field that normally would, be some kind of plane, but there's maybe holes or divots in it, and then they're
Who
cracked.
knows?
Yeah, I know
Could be anything.
It's wild speculation, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to take up your time with that, but I thought that was fascinating. In terms of like ancient aliens, that's another curiosity to me, because it seems to be, if the alien astronaut theory is true, that these races were potentially very much involved in the formation of what we understand as civilization, and possibly teaching us advanced sciences and things. But you got to wonder, like, okay, what happened that it stopped? It seems like the ancient world, it was really potentially common that these beings would come down and interact and help direct things. What do you take of that, George?
Maybe it is not stopped. Maybe it continues. It has just evolved into other things in other ways. If the study from Montana and Harvard is correct, that they've been living here since the beginning of time, tucked away somewhere in crevices, the hollow earth, who knows where.
That's true. Interesting take. And you're right. I mean, that could be what's going on with some of these alien abduction theories and experiences, is that's the continuation or the next phase of it.
Exactly.
What's your take on animal mutilations? Because that seems rather archaic for what we understand as these advanced races.
They're studying something. They're
Okay.
testing these animals to see something about their organs and what has happened. Maybe they put something in the atmosphere and they want to see if it's absorbed or something that could affect us eventually as well. But I think it is definitely a biological testing program and procedure. Now, are there some hoaxers out there killing animals? Yeah, maybe, but these other cases are strange. There's no blood. There's laser incisions. There's very minute operations. Something's happening out there.
Yeah, and it's also curious that these animals that have been experienced are found deceased. Even scavengers won't touch them. So something's going on with them that even nature goes, no, I'm staying away from that.
I had a friend of mine who studied a case in Ellsbury, Missouri years ago, and there was a mutilated cow, and other cows walked around it in a circle. They wanted nothing to do with coming close to it, but they just kind of walked in a circle, and he said they filmed it. It was unbelievable.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that is fascinating.
Weird stuff.
Huh. That is really crazy. I guess we should. I mean, I know I've been talking to you a bunch about the UFO stuff, but I am kind of curious about your position on things like cryptozoology. Do you believe Bigfoot is out there? And
well, there's a creature out there. People are seeing something. Is it part man, part ape? I don't know. But there's definitely something. People are witnessing too many things. They're not making these things up.
Right.
Personally, I think Bigfoot is the cross between ape and man, and has been around here since the beginning of time as well. But there's definitely something out there.
Yeah, I would agree. What about Dogman? Do you cover that much on your shows?
We've done some shows on Dogman. It's a weird creature. Yes. It's a strange planet. It's got a lot of different things going on out there.
Well,
but it's fun. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is, and I find it fascinating. And I don't know about you, George, but I before I started doing shows, I was like, I know this stuff. I can talk about this stuff all day. I've been reading about it for decades. And then once you get into it and you start going down these rabbit holes, you're like, oh my God, it just goes, it's spider webs and it's so.
It's endless too. It goes into every different direction and crevice and things like that.
Yeah.
Where it leads us eventually, who knows, but it's well worth the trip.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating journey. And I love this stuff because I think it's so incredibly important because it's I don't know, at least teaching us that maybe our version of reality we don't understand as well as we think. This idea of a concrete box and the absolute rules and stuff, and then all this other weirdness happens that defies all that. And maybe it just expands our mind or gets us looking. You know what I mean, for the real truth.
The truth is out there. We just need to find it.
Absolutely. Also would like to talk to you about ghosts, if you don't mind. Have you ever had any experiences?
I haven't had any direct experience with a ghost. I will tell you an interesting story that I've talked about on Coast before. When I was a little boy, we'd go back to Fitchburg, Massachusetts, where my mother was born. Mm-hmm. And her father at the time had built a large apartment complex and took a couple units and put them together, in which we stayed in when we visited them. Mm-hmm. And underneath, on the ground level, was a furniture store that he owned. That's what he did for a career. It's called the Union Furniture Company in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. It's not there anymore.
Okay.
But one night, I'm sleeping on the second level. My parents were sleeping on the third level. I get woken up by a fire department guy who's wearing a hood, the mask, and everything. And he says, "Son, wake up, wake up. The place is engulfed in smoke."
Oh.
And he said, "Is there anybody else here?" And I said, "My parents and my sisters are upstairs." And he said, "Well, let's wake everybody up and get everybody out of this place right now." And we did. And everybody got out. We ran outside. They put the fire out. It started in the furniture store in a mattress. Somebody had thrown a cigarette in there during the day, and it festered and all that. Well, the Fitchburg Sentinel was a newspaper. They had a picture of little me in my pajamas running outside and stuff like that, and by barefoot. Well, my dad wanted to thank the fire department guy who woke me up, saved their lives. So he went to the chief and said, "Chief, where's the guy who woke my son up, who came in and saved us? I want to thank him." The chief said, "Sir, we never got into the apartment. We battled the fire on the bottom and put it out. We had not yet reached the apartment complex to get you folks out. We didn't even know there was anybody up there."
Wow.
He said, "There was a guy who woke my son up, who had the helmet on and the plastic mask and all that." And he said, "Sir, we never got in there."
Oh my God.
Who was that?
Yeah.
My angel? Something or somebody woke me up. The place was engulfed in smoke. I could have died of smoke inhalation. My parents could have died as it was rising to the top. Woke us up. We got out. And they say he was never there.
Wow. That's incredible.
An amazing story.
That is an amazing story. And I mean, the alternative, of course, is we wouldn't be having this conversation, which is, that's incredible. That's a divine intervention, right?
Absolutely. I think it was my guardian angel. That's my guess.
Well,
But I'll take it. He's still watching me.
it's not a ghost story, but that's a hell of a story.
That's right.
That's awesome.
But I do believe in ghosts.
Yeah.
They're real.
Okay.
The other side is very supernatural, and it's out there.
Well, and it seems that this side is pretty supernatural too.
This is a strange time right now. We're going through a lot of bizarre stuff, but it's real.
Yes, it is.
And you couldn't write this kind of script.
No, it's a truly, they say truth is stranger than fiction, and I got to agree. I don't think anybody could possibly write this book beforehand. This is incredible. But it does seem that, the people are opening their minds to the possibilities, and that's really exciting. And again, you're one of those voices that I think really has helped encourage people to journey into these possibilities, and your career has been nothing short of incredible. And I just want to thank you for all that you've done to help move the needle forward, George.
My pleasure, and thank you for the things you've done too, Brent.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. And I'm just honored that we had this opportunity. I know your time is tight, but thank you so much for making this time and making this conversation just incredible. How can people best stay in touch with you and what you're doing?
Watch us on any of your local radio stations in your cities. If you ever want to find out exactly where we are, just go to coasttocoastam.com. At the top, it says media. Click that, and it'll have a whole list of stations. Watch us on beyondbelief.com, the Gaia TV show, and just support your friends and love your family.
Well, amen, George. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor, and I can't thank you enough for this.
Thank you, Brent. Take care.
All right. Good day, sir. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show. And thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media, such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.